Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ontario Caregiver Organization's webinar series. These webinars bring together caregivers and subject matter experts to explore topics of interest to caregivers. We do this to support and engage chosen family, friends, and neighbors who are caring for someone. My name is Hannah Albany, and I will be your moderator for today. I want to begin today by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on. While we meet today on a virtual platform, with people joining from various places, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land which we each call home. If you'd like to learn more about the lands you are joining from, you can learn more at native-land.ca. I am speaking to you from the city of Thunder Bay. Thunder Bay sits on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe people and the traditional territory of Fort William First Nations, signatory to the Robinson Superior Treaty of 1850. I want to acknowledge and express my gratitude to the Inuit, Métis, and First Nation people across Turtle Island who have protected and nurtured these lands from the beginning of time. As team members at OCO, we are learning about the lands from which we work, exploring how we can be meaningful allies, and how we can support the recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility to improving relationships between nations and to improve our understanding of local Indigenous peoples. I kindly invite you to take a moment to reflect with me on the profound impact of colonization, recognizing the devastation it has caused and its ongoing effects on the lives of Indigenous people, and also to consider how we can each contribute to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. So I would like to move on and be able to welcome us all to our webinar today that is titled Indigenous Caregivers, Tools to Support Your Journey. And we're very fortunate to have two wonderful speakers with us today, Holly Prince and Elder Rosella. In my role with OCO, I've had the privilege of working alongside Holly for the past 2 years to adapt resources of OCOs to make them culturally safer for Indigenous communities and people. Holly and her team have been an invaluable source of information, and collaborating with them has been a true pleasure. I had the honor of meeting Elder Rosella yesterday, and her dedication and compassion was immediately apparent. She has the experience of a lifetime, both professionally and personally, in helping family and many community members through their palliative care journey and in their preparation for their journey. It is with great pleasure that I welcome Holly Prince and Elder Rosella. I will now pass the webinar reins over to you.
Miigwech, Hannah. So at this time, I'll ask Rosella to come on screen, and you can unmute your microphone as well, Rosella. So bojo, everyone, Wijwe Kwe Nadishnakas, Thunderbay Nadonjiba Makwado Dem. My English name is Holly Prince, and I am an Anishinaabe Kwe and member of Okwaganisaning here in Northwestern Ontario. I want to begin by paying my respects to the elders past, present, and future, for they hold the knowledge, teachings, traditions, and future hopes of my people. I'm a social worker by background, currently doing my PhD in educational studies here at Lakehead University, defending this fall. My passion really centers around decolonial education and the resurgence of Indigenous knowledge. I am deeply committed to reactivating and revitalizing Anishinaabe Kandaskalin, so Anishinaabe knowledge, and healthy caregiving networks to decolonize care for Indigenous peoples at the end of life. One of our 7 sacred teachings as Anishinaabe is the teaching of humility, which is knowing yourself as a sacred part of creation and recognizing that you are here, standing on the shoulders of others and building upon their knowledge and wisdom. So I do want to acknowledge Elder Rosella Kenosha-Meg, who is here with me today. And Elder Rosella has guided, mentored, and created space for me to share her teachings of her family, of her nation, and of her community. She has a tremendous amount of knowledge, has cared for many sick people in her community, and has helped them along their journey back to the spirit world. She is a highly respected, strong leader in her community and has the vision to improve and enhance the care provided to her community members. So now I'd like to ask Elder Rosella to introduce herself and open our meeting in a good way with a prayer. Miigwech.
Okay. Then Mekonim Kinawea. Greetings to all. And I say Bojo Bojo. Ani, which is welcome. Hello. Rosella Kinoshmek Nishnikas. My name is Rosella Kinoshmek. Nandoekwen Dishnikango, that's the name that has been given to me, which means healing woman. Nin Ojibwe Wadawa Kwe, I'm Ojibwe Wadawa. Beneshin Dodem, I'm from the Bird Clan. Mokwan Denadmak, and that's the bear is my spirit helper. And I'm from a little place called Doganing, which is on Wikwemekong, the Domnising, Donjaba. It's a little it's on the Wikwemekong unceded territory, which is on Manitoulin Island. And I will add that I'm from a family of 10, and my mother adopted 2 more after me. So these 2 were always my sisters. I went to residential school, and they used to say residential school survivors, but lately it's residential school warriors. I have been a registered nurse. I'm still registered till this year, and I've worked for 52 years. I only retired 4 years ago. And I have been mandated as DOS, Diocesan Order of Service for my community. And recently, now almost a 3rd year now, I guess, I've been chair of the Indigenous Reconciliation Fund for Canada. So that's my biggest job. And so that's all the information I'll give you about myself. I think Holly told you enough already. So we'll do our prayer. Now I'm going to use some Indigenous language in there too in the prayer. Oh, Great Spirit, Father of all creation, thank you for all the people who have come today, and we give thanks for everything you have made and have given to us to use. We give thanks for Mimadswin, that's our life. We give thanks for Node in the air, we saying for the breath of life. We give you thanks for Nibeh, the water, for cleansing and refreshment. We give thanks for the gifts of the directions. Wabnong, Jaunong, Ebingishmok, Giwetnong. That's the east, south, west, and north. We give thanks for the gifts of Jesus, the sun, who guides us through the day, gives us light to see our way, and gives us warmth. We give thanks for the big Jesus, the moon, who lightens our path in the night. We give thanks for Shkakmikwe, Mother Earth, who gives us plants for our nutritional and medicinal needs and for the healing of our body, mind, and spirit. We give thanks for Mtigok, the trees that give us shelter, protection, and comfort in our lives. We give thanks for Wesiak, all the animals, for their teachings of being good providers. We give thanks for the Beneshiak, the birds of the air, for their beautiful songs. We give thanks for Nijwasla Chitwa Kinomagewinan, the seven sacred gifts to help us guide us on our journey every day. This is respect, humility, bravery, honesty, truth, wisdom, and love. Mingwezwinan, these are the gifts that we have received to help so that we can lend a helping hand, especially in times of need, to provide service, giving the highest level of care to all that we meet every day. Miigwech, we give thanks, Minoa Gibshayak, for bringing us together today as we walk together for peaceful harmony and respectful relationship. And so for all these and more, we say Miigwech, Miigwech, Miigwech.
Miigwech, Elder Rosella. So today we're here to talk to you about our knowledge, our experiences, and how we move forward to support Indigenous caregivers. So I do want to say Miigwech, the Ontario Caregivers Organization, who invited us into the space today to share some of our knowledge, to share some of our teachings and experiences of caregiving as Indigenous peoples. We will also share some newly developed resources to support caregivers as they journey alongside someone. And as we present these teachings and thoughts to you today, I want to acknowledge that we are sharing these stories and teachings through our lens as Anishinaabeg, as Anishinaabeg women. And so our teachings and stories may be different than other nations and communities. So I work at the Center for Education and Research on Aging and Health at Lakehead University in Thunder Bay, Ontario, where I lead the Indigenous Peoples Health and Aging Division. Our division really focuses on equity and social justice and social responsibility. And we recognize that these foundational principles have the potential to influence policy and programs and educational learning systems for Indigenous peoples. Our division has two main goals. So we partner with Indigenous peoples to lead culturally relevant research and education and to create the space to amplify Indigenous peoples' voices. The division is Indigenous-led and implemented. So as the lead for the division, I view my work and how I lead the division through my Anishinaabe Kundasip and through my Anishinaabe knowledge, through my own values and my beliefs and teachings. And I receive guidance and support from elders throughout the work in creating this space. Within the division, we have a number of Indigenous and non-Indigenous staff who work together as knowledge brokers and curriculum developers and community-based educators. And as a team, through a lens of decolonization, we recognize our respectful roles and knowledge systems, and we work together to create systems and change that are directed by Indigenous communities. In doing so, we create respectful, authentic, and collaborative partnerships with Indigenous communities by engaging and investing in a relational approach. These partnerships are how we conduct and move research into action. Our research is community-based and guided by communities, and the research outcomes have provided us with opportunities and direction to inform knowledge translation and educational tools and resources. So as a result, our division can really respond to community needs by developing, implementing curricula and resources through a co-design process. So from an Indigenous lens, health and wellness are really about balancing the body, mind, and spirit. It's about being in relationship with one another and having a sense of belonging and connection with those around us. So as Elder Jim Dumont shares, that wellness from an Indigenous perspective is a whole and healthy person expressed through a balance of spirit, emotion, mind, and body. And central to that wellness is belief in one's connection to language, to land, to beings of creation and ancestry, supported by a caring family and environment. So I just want to spend a moment just to talk about the diagram that's depicted on the screen. It's the Indigenous Wellness Framework, which was developed within the field of addictions and mental health, but it's applicable in our discussions today about caregiving at the end of life. The development of this framework was influenced by many Indigenous teachings across Canada, including the medicine wheel, but no directions are attached to this framework as their meetings and teachings differ across the country. So what the Indigenous Wellness Framework says is that it describes well-being as a balance of 4 kinds of wellness, and each kind of wellness creates a key outcome. So that spiritual wellness creates hope, and it's really facilitated when we're connected to our beliefs, values, and identity. Emotional wellness creates a sense of belonging, and that's facilitated through attitude, through relationships, and connections to our family and communities. Mental wellness creates meaning, and that's facilitated through things like our understanding and our rationale. And physical wellness creates purpose, and it's really expressed through wholeness and a way of being and doing. And when I speak of Indigenous peoples, I recognize that there's many diverse values, beliefs, and practices across and within Indigenous communities regarding caring for people who are very sick. But there are some shared foundational principles within Indigenous worldviews which frame how we view ourselves, our connections and our relationships, and our responsibilities to one another. So the spirit is the most fundamental feature of an Indigenous worldview. It's always at the center, and it works in relationship to the mind and the body. The spirit is in all things and throughout all things. We talk about the concept of all my relations. So it's important, and it means that we are all related to one another, and we are responsible for maintaining harmonious relationships. Another one is we acknowledge the path of life continuum, which means that the experience of living in this world is understood as a journey of the spirit moving through these stages, and we are connected to our ancestors and to those yet unborn. When we talk about Indigenous teachings and preparing for that journey back to spirit world, we recognize that death is really viewed as a social and community event, with caregiving provided by family and community. So family and community networks are important to Indigenous peoples, and that concept of kinship is woven throughout the fabric of our culture. Preparing for death really focuses on ensuring that that spirit is strong and at peace and is ready to transition back to Creator. In Anishinaabe culture, the concepts of kinship and relational accountability are really deeply ingrained in our beliefs. This principle of caring for one another is embodied in the concept of family, which extends beyond bloodlines to encompass the wider community. So we do not distinguish between family and community when discussing caregiving, as the two are inseparable. This is really evident when someone is nearing the end of life and the community gathers together to offer support and keep vigil at the bedside. In Indigenous communities, we believe that everyone is responsible for caring for sick people and ensuring that they are prepared to return to spirit world. And the family community plays a crucial role in meeting the spiritual needs and emotional needs. So this involves for planning for ceremonies and services, offering prayers, and supporting each other through grieving. So at this time, I would like to hand it over to Elder Rosella, and really think about and ask her to share some of those values and beliefs and teachings related to caregiving. And if she could offer and share one story of how she provided care to someone, either professionally or personally. So Elder Rosella?
Okay. Holly has picked up a lot of the teachings that I've shared her over the years, but there are some important things to keep in mind, and that part of our culture is to look after our own through life, right from birth to the time of dying. And this process involves the immediate family, extended family, friends, maybe the whole community, and everyone has a role to play. You know, there are people who look after the physical care. There are those that do the spiritual care with the prayers and the ceremonies, and other people who give support in other ways, such as being present, bringing in food, being involved in housekeeping, such as doing the floors, the dishes, or laundry, or whatever needs to be done. And everyone comes together and everybody works together and the work gets done. And even without assignment of specific roles, just by observing what needs to be done, people get up and they do, and how they do it and what each one can contribute. And so we call this listening with our eyes, that what we do by observing, our ears by hearing, and with our heart by going with the feelings. So, and one of our teachings is to be prepared and be ready. So we learn about a pathway and its powers that show us how to use and live the gifts of the medicine wheel, and also the 7 sacred teachings or 7 grandfather teachings, to be always ready. And that we should do all this throughout our whole life, not just at the end of life, but all during your life. So we live the teachings of the medicine wheel of the 4 directions. These are not just things that we see like a picture, but really we lived all those things that are written in there. And we live the 7 sacred teachings. These are also known as 7 grandfather teachings. These are medicines for the well-being. And that's respect, humility, compassion or bravery, honesty, truth, wisdom, and unconditional love. By living these in balance and harmony each and every day, then every day we are ready to meet our Creator. Now, there are the terminology, I guess, in the Western world, you know how you say palliative care. Well, that's kind of an unfamiliar term in our culture, and so we say journey to the spirit world, or we refer to the birth as sunrise and death as sunset, or we just say spirit journey. And we will use words like ginigiwe, which means gone home, and we never say goodbye. Mamapi kawapmin, meanwhile, we say we will see you later. So death is return to this return of the spirit to the spirit world, in that place of understanding and wisdom, place of everlasting joy. And Geminonokosit, that's what my brother, the term that he used. And so we came from the Creator when we were sent here to the earth. We came from the Creator, the land of the Creator, and then the Creator calls us, and so we return to the Creator. I came across this little quote, I guess it's called "Do not grieve. Do not grieve. Misfortunes will happen to the wisest and best of men. Death will come, always out of season. It is the command of the Great Spirit, and all nations and people must obey. What is past and what cannot be prevented should not be grieved for." And those words come from Big Elk, an Omaha chief. So dying is an important part of completing that circle of life. As we come to fulfillment of our purpose, we were sent here either to learn or to teach, and so we have completed both. If there's anything that we have not completed, well, we as family members or caregivers, we tell the dying person, if there's anything that you have not completed, someone will complete that for you. It will still happen. Now, we give support to the caregivers through the Medicine Wheel Journey of Care, and Holly shared part of that here. We give service to others to the best of our ability, the best that we know how. And we look at the individual in a positive way as a spiritual being, and that we give love unconditionally, no matter who they are, no matter where they are. And spirituality is important in achieving balance and healing. And this way too, when it's indigenous person who's the caregiver, the care is culturally sensitive and safe care that they give. Because when they go to the hospital, sometimes people do not always get the good service that they should be getting in the hospital. And so they will refuse to go to the hospital. Now, language is also very important, and so is the communication that goes with that. Because many people, especially the elders, they will revert to their mother tongue. And so it's important for the young workers to learn the language so that they can understand the person who's dying and what they're saying. I know it's been my experience that, especially the young people today, we say we're losing our language, and that's true. They don't speak the language, and it's hard for them to understand the dying person and what they're talking about. I had experienced that in my family through my father-in-law, whose children did not speak the language, and so I had to do a lot of the translations. And many people want to be in their own home. They don't like going into the hospital because this way they have a sense of control. They are surrounded by their family, their friends, and community 24/7. Whereas if you go into the hospital, you have visiting hours, and maybe if you're in palliative care, maybe they will allow the family to stay longer hours, maybe 24 hours. And always be careful when the dying person says, "Go home," or "I want to go home." Some people, especially the younger people, do not understand what that means. They don't understand. They think this individual, their mother or their father, they want to go home, and they're unable to do that for some reason, medical reason. And they want, and if they say, I'm going home, I know that's what my auntie told me when she was dying. She told me in the language, Dinigia. And I said, what? I had to think twice, saying what does she really mean, and then it came to me, yes, she's telling me she is leaving this world to go to the spirit world. Now, in the my wheel that I have there, the medicine wheel for care providers in their care and healing, the worker has to anticipate the needs of the individual to see what needs to be done, and they respond with whatever, physical care maybe. If they ask for certain kinds of, now some people can't eat as they're in their last few days. And I know my sister asked me for carrot soup. I said, okay, I'll go home and make it. I got home and I didn't even have carrots in my fridge. So I had to find out somebody. I said, I need some carrots. So I did make her the soup. And she only had maybe 2 teaspoons of that. Maybe it's water, all those things that they need, like air and that. So we have to think about those needs. Also, when we care for others, we have to listen with our eyes, our ears, and our heart, like I said, to that individual, not just to the family and the surroundings, but to the dying person. And I always say, we have to listen with love, and it's to listen with your eyes, your ears, your heart, to overlook anything that's negative. Don't even consider anything that's negative. And to use your voice to communicate, to talk to the individual that's dying, to talk to other family members that are there, and then in your effort to do something really good for that individual. And so we, like we have the teachings about knowledge, freedom, security, and learning. So all those things we include in our care. And to involve the family, involve the relatives. Community is very important in this whole process. And I will tell you a little story about that particular involving the family in a minute or two. And then, then our teachings that I just talked about, those come in handy. You have to remember those as you're giving care to the individual. Now to my personal story. I think I'll have two quick little stories to tell you. The first story was a great opportunity for learning. It was my experience of a lifetime, and I experienced profound wisdom. It was my one brother who was dying, and I was away at the time, I guess, when he was diagnosed. But this was when I came back. I was told he had about 6 months to live. But when I went to see him, I said, "No, I don't think he has 6 months." And then I said, "Maybe 3 months." No, not even 3 months. It ended up like 2 weeks. And so I was involved mostly with the spiritual care. It was very difficult at first, but I found it very rewarding. There was a time of sharing and listening to him. And then with the family, it's just helping. That helped how everyone shared. And from him, it was about life, dying, and death. And so I learned lots of things. And he didn't want me to leave his side. But I had to, like when you need when nature calls and you have to go. I heard somebody's voice and they peeked in. I said, "Come over here." I made a motion for them to come right away, and I slipped his hand into his hand, and I took mine out, and I'd go do my thing, But everyone came together. Everyone worked together. The family, and I learned about family and community closeness. And most important, including the children, because here they were in the house running in and out and all over, and you think that they're not paying attention. And then all of a sudden they said, what about us? So it's important to include the children in all what's happening around the family house. And, it's without assignment of specific roles, but, people around there, the family, they just did everything by observing what needs to be done and what each can contribute. Then the other story is about my brother-in-law, who at one point, I guess he had never been sick and he never went to the hospital. And so when he got sick with it was his heart, I guess, and he went in and I guess by this time he'd heard of people dying in the hospital. And so they told him, you're going to be at the end room at the end of the hallway. And he said, I'm not going to stay here. I'm not going to die in that room. He said, I'm just going to put my clothes and go home. But anyways, when his time came um, to dying, he wanted to die at home. So they fixed up his bedroom and everything, and they put the nurses' blood pressure and all that, everything else that the nurse was to use, and everything was in a special corner. And so what my role was to teach the grandsons how to care for their grandfather, or their father and their grandfather, because they were the strong boys, and I couldn't lift him because he was a big man, eh? So I said, okay, you boys, you're going to learn how to care for your father and your grandfather, and these are the things that have to be done. And so I taught him how to turn him in bed, how to lift him up, and how to give him back care, and how to give mouth care when he couldn't do it. And then towards the end, I taught them how to give the cedar bath. And I also gave them many other teachings that they needed to learn about when he dies, about cleansing the room, accompanying the body from the house right to the hearse, um, and about light, like if they wanted to have a sacred fire or just using a candle, and opening the window when he was dying so to let the spirit out. So all this helped to strengthen me and had that new capacity for living. And my reward, I think, is this is what is supposed to happen. This is what I'm supposed to be doing, and to be good at what we do. And the reward comes not from being thanked, but to feel good inside in your heart and in your spirit that you've done your best to look after the dying person. And then the end is the life should end as beautiful and naturally as coming into the world. Because when we were born and little babies, we're always so excited, we're so happy, so joyous, that this little baby is being born. Well, here we are giving birth of this individual into the spirit world. And we should be happy that's where they're going, because they're going to enjoy that. And Jim Nona was saying that joy forever. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Elder Rosella. And as Elder Rosella mentioned, in terms of palliative care, it is something that we don't use in our communities. But I do want to recognize that the Indigenous Wellness Framework and palliative care, although they come from two knowledge systems, from that Indigenous and that Western ways of knowing, there are synergies and connections between these philosophies and frameworks around health and wellness. So they both honor the connections and relationships that people have with family members and community members and care providers. And they both focus on wellness and healing through physical healing and spiritual healing and the healings of families through things like grief work. So within our education that we do at our center, we do support formal caregivers within the spiritual, physical, emotional, and mental realms. But we do recognize that family and community provide the majority of care when someone is sick. Therefore, we always look at ways to meet the educational needs of Indigenous families and community caregivers. So before I share these resources with you, I would like to share a story by Jenny Cross, and this is part of a project that I'm involved with through the Canadian Virtual Hospice called livingmyculture.ca. And this was funded by the Canadian Partnership Against Cancer. And throughout this project, we went across Canada to meet with First Nation, Inuit, and Métis caregivers and those living with cancer to provide space for them to share their experiences and stories of cancer, health and illness, culture, dying, and death.
The doctors were very supportive in her decision and what she wanted, and the next day they came to my parents' house and talked with all of us. We had kind of like a family meeting, and he let us know, explained to us that, this is, are you up for palliative care, and this is what you can expect, and she was on morphine then, and are you all willing to administer the medication and stuff like that, and my brothers and my dad and I, we all said, yeah, that this is what she wants, and this is what we'll do for her, and she wanted to smell Christmas baking in her house, and so the granddaughters baked cookies, and her house smelled like beautiful Christmas cookies and fish cooking on the stove, and all the traditional, like she can smell the traditional foods cooking in her house. And oh my goodness. And my mom, my brothers and I and our families, we all went and shared a nice meal, and it was like a really, it was like when we were kids again. In that time, our mom was in her last days. It was like going back to our childhood and all being under the same roof. My older brother came and he would cook for all of us, and like we all pulled together to just make this one last time good for her. And it was very magical. We all took turns spending the night, and we all had our turns with her in her bedroom, talking with her and having our private talks with her. And we put a bed in her bedroom, a cot, so that each of us can sleep in there with her. And my mom's sister spent days with us, supporting us, and the community come together and bringing us foods for our family, because they knew that what we were going through with our mom. And so the community support was amazing. Even though everybody's getting ready for Christmas at that time, they all took the time to bring us food and to feed us, because that's just our traditional way of supporting families in need. And like that support just like kind of warms your heart to have people like that to come along.
So now I'd like to share some innovative resources and tools that can help support caregivers. So foundational to the Indigenous Peoples Health and Aging Division suite of resources that we have is a bedside care manual called Preparing for the Journey, Caring for Indigenous Peoples Who Are Seriously Ill. This manual provides teachings and strategies and culturally relevant resources to support people as they make that journey. It really focuses around things like the PALIV approach to care, making your wishes known, developing a care plan, and how you could support the emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical wellness of the person and caregivers. There's also a section that focuses around last days and hours of living in an expected death. So this is a resource that's based on clinical best practices, and it's designed to provide practical tools and resources for caring at the bedside. It's available on our website and can be downloaded for free. In addition to our resource manual, we also have a community caregiver curriculum. So in response to the need for that community caregiver education, we developed a new online curriculum for training and supporting community caregivers and family members called Walking Alongside Indigenous Peoples Who Are Seriously Ill, Education for Community Caregivers, which was recently released in 2022. It's designed to help providers feel more confident in delivering education and support to family and community members caring for loved ones with chronic illnesses. There are 9 sections in this curriculum, and each section includes things like slide decks with speaker notes, which are developed to help health and social care workers teach family caregivers, community members, and other health and social care providers about the important aspects of caregiving for someone who is seriously ill. And there's a number of supporting resources, including videos and handouts and pamphlets as well. The last resource that I'd like to share builds upon this 2-year partnership between Ontario Caregivers Organization and our Centre for Education and Research on Aging and Health. So after launching the Walking Alongside online curriculum, the Ontario Caregivers Organization approached us to see how they could work with us and how we could work together to adapt some of their Ontario Caregiver Organization tools to better meet the needs of Indigenous communities. So we began looking at the I Am Caregiver Toolkit. So with that, I brought together an Indigenous guidance circle of elders, healthcare providers, and community members to review the document and to provide some feedback on the resource. This feedback was then compiled and changes were made to the toolkit to incorporate their direction. So after several drafts, the final I Am a Caregiver Toolkit for Indigenous communities was finalized, and it's now available for download on the Ontario Caregivers website. And in that resource, you will find a lot of information specific for Indigenous peoples, including things like building your circle of support, as well as other resources that are available to support Indigenous caregivers as they are walking alongside somebody who is journeying back to spirit world. So with that, I would like to say miigwech on behalf of myself and Elder Rosella Knoshameg for inviting us into the space, for listening to our teachings and our stories, for becoming familiar with some of our new resources that we've developed here at SARA and through our partnership with the Ontario Caregivers Organization. So with that, I would like to hand it back to Hannah.
Thank you so much, Holly and Elder Rosella. So much wonderful information that you both shared, and personal stories and then resources that are available for Indigenous folks and for people that are supporting Indigenous folks through whatever way they are. And thank you, Elder Rosella, for your blessing and your insights today. And we'll have a few minutes now so that we can do a bit of a question and answer period. And I'm noticing some chats happening in the chat box, but I wanted to start with a question about the circles of support for people that are caregiving. And it sounds like in Indigenous communities, it's very much a natural thing for people to come together and offer that support. And I'm wondering if there's someone that is struggling to be able to build that circle support and needs some extra support from their community, how they could go about talking to community members and being able to ask for that support rather than the where it seems like sometimes people automatically come together and come to that person.
Elder Rosella, do you want to start?
Well, if you look in your community, you can begin by talking to the nurse if you don't know the other people that are involved in the care. She can probably give you, names of people in the community, and I think that's always good to know because you may not need them today or tomorrow, but at some point in that whole journey, you may need the help of those individuals, and so you need to know. And if you had even a little diagram, people sometimes draw a little diagram of what's available in the community, and that's important to know.
I think it's about being connected to those already established resources and reaching out to those resources. And I know Elder Rosella and I talked a lot about what happens in particular in First Nation communities, because that's where we come from. But for people who are in urban centers or regional centers, it's reaching out to those local resources to find that community network of people. Sometimes when we are in urban centers, for instance, it's a little bit more isolating because you don't have the opportunity to be closely connected to your family or to your community. But there are a lot of resources in a lot of the regional communities and urban centers, including places like the Indigenous Friendship Centers in particular, who offer a lot of support, who offer a lot of programs, who offer a lot of resources to help. And you can always connect with us here at the center. We do have a lot of connections within community as well to be able to navigate some of those transitions in care and to ensure that that circle of care is strong.
And
Wonderful.
even
Thank
in
you.
the Indigenous, we call it Indigenous healthcare centers, they might have an individual, a nurse who is assigned to palliative care. So just, that's in the city or wherever,
Right. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. It sounds like there's lots available, but it's sometimes we need to put ourselves out there as caregivers to be able to ask for that support as well. And I was really moved by the framing of death in Indigenous cultures that you spoke of, where it really seems like that death is part of the journey. It's not a taboo or something that people avoid. It's a known part. And when you said, Elder Rosella, about people who call it going home, I thought that was a really beautiful way of putting it and being able to visualize that full circle for people. Is there anything that you would recommend, or do you have insights on helping people to come to terms sometimes with death, and that sometimes it's a difficult thing for people to be able to come to terms with and grasp?
Well, in my work in the communities, I think I came across one individual who's non-Indigenous but married to an Indigenous woman. And when he was diagnosed, he apparently he cried every day. And then she called me and he said, since he got diagnosed, he's been crying every day. Can you come? So I went. He was a great big man, and so I just talked to him. I think I was there about 2 hours. Just talked to him about, what's going to happen, like the things that he might feel, and so we finished at 2 hours, and then she called me a couple of days, and she says he's not crying anymore. So I must have said the right things then. I had another woman who was very angry. And she says, when I die, I'm not going to have anything, nothing. Well, we spent all that time talking and just going through what is it that made her angry. And then the next time I saw her, she was already in palliative care in the hospital. And then she said, would you pray? So I prayed. And then she says, you pray for all that? And I said, yes. And then she died about 4 days after, I guess. And then I found out that, yes, she was going to have a ceremony. I said, well, I guess I better go. So I went, and I was the first one there. And so the firekeeper was there, and he hadn't started the fire yet. We're waiting for the family to come. And then he said, I'm not starting the fire until the family brings the candle. Because what they did was they lit the candle, because they were in the city, eh? You can't make a secret fire in the city. So they're bringing the candle, then I'll light the sacred fire from that candle. So I was happy with that. And I said, okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Elder Rosella. That it really paints a picture of how it seems like just having those conversations and getting to know the person as an individual and understanding their fears or anger and where that's coming from is so important in someone being comfortable and at peace when they're in their palliative care or their journey to the spirit world.
I think in addition to that, I think what needs to happen, which is happening now, is as a result of colonization, a lot of our teachings have been forcibly removed out of our communities. So we are in a process of reclaiming our teachings, reclaiming our knowledge. And, you know, we have beautiful teachings around birth and death, and those two are connected. And so going back to our original teachings around our creation stories also talk about our dying. And so, you know, as Indigenous peoples, when we're reclaiming those stories and understanding that death is part of that, that death has been decided by ourselves in our negotiations and contract with Creator, it's about completing that circle, it's about fulfilling that circle. And in terms of caregivers, you know, it's recognizing the important role that family and community caregivers have throughout that process. You know, as family and community, we are the ones that are supposed to be helping that individual journey. We are the ones who are supposed to be ensuring that those ceremonies, that those protocols are followed to ensure that that person is ready to transition back to spirit world. So it's not an individual person dying. It is truly a community experience. And so when you are surrounded, you know, by 40 people in the hospital, it can become very difficult for the hospital, but it's very important for that family community to be there, to vigil beside that person, and to ensure that that process is being followed.
Thank you for that, Holly. Yeah, that makes me think of that often we hear from caregivers that isolation is one of those really hard parts for them. So to have that community around you, I can imagine for both the caregivers and the person that they're caring for, it's a source of comfort and a source of serenity for them to have these people that they're not alone going through these difficult moments.
Mhm. But there's one more thing I should have mentioned. You know, when a person is dying, they see things that you don't see, you know, and but it's a way of telling where they are at on their journey. Are they getting closer, you know? And they are not hallucinating. That was the most important thing I wanted to say. People are not hallucinating, you know. They will see someone who has died, maybe an ancestor or their mother or father, and they'll talk of somebody just passing by the doorway, you know. So, you know, oh yeah, okay, they still have some more time. And then they'll say, well, they're at the foot of my bed, or they're right beside me. And then you know that that time is really, really close, you know. So don't think that they are hallucinating, and don't mark it down as hallucinations. That is the message that we are leaving ready any minute now.
Well, and that's such a beautiful thing to think that you have your people around you as you're passing, but you have your people around you when you move into that spirit world too, and that it's not alone on either side of in this world or in the spirit world. Thank you for that. That just gave me some goosebumps. Um, we have one question that just came in before we wrap up is from someone that is asking if you're aware of any Indigenous health teams that operate in hospitals that have someone dedicated to palliative care.
I would say the majority of the Indigenous staff that are working in hospitals that support chronic disease management or palliative care would be people like your Indigenous patient navigators. There's also new roles in some hospitals and in community called Indigenous transition navigators. So the Indigenous patient navigators would help within the hospital, transitioning that person throughout the system, connecting them with people like cultural or spiritual care providers, and connecting within that family organization. And then the Indigenous transition facilitators are really those staff within hospitals who are looking at ways to transition clients back home and helping them navigate that system of care.
Thank you for that, Holly. So as we wrap up the webinar, I want to extend another big thank you to Holly for sharing so much valuable information today and for all the work we've done alongside each other over the last couple of years. And I want to thank Elder Rosella again for being with us and sharing so much valuable information and starting and ending our sessions in a good way. So I'll turn it over to you, Holly, and Elder Rosella.
Excellent. So I do want to say miigwech to each and every one of you for coming, for sharing, for participating, for learning, and for listening. And at this time, before we end, we will have a post-course survey. But I do want to give it over to Rosella to say some final thoughts and to close us off in a good way. So, Elder Rosella.
I just want to say thank you to everybody who attended the webinar, and hopefully the information that Holly and I gave you will be helpful in the care that you will be providing, doing the best that you can do to the best of your ability, and to help the people to transition to the spirit world. That's very important. And so I will say my closing prayer. I'll make it short. Shem Nado Deben Myong, miigwech, iwid myong nango, with the bottom ani eyamang, wakinomagyang, mage gasha chkadekin, zinegan, genagodoeg, minoge, nango, ganuntamek, manpika tona, jamachi doeg. We know to see another modo when the one majik, one egijik. We thank you for being with us today, our Creator, and for helping us to understand what was presented. And that I pray that you take what you have learned, put it in your heart, and you carry it with you to help other people as they transition to the spirit world. Miigwech, 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 miigwech.